Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I am Muneeb Hamid with the news of this hour. Let's begin with the headlines first. The United States has registered record 3,936 daily deaths from COVID-19, while its infections tally has topped 21 million. The United Kingdom's daily COVID-19 infections tally reached record high with nearly 61,000 new cases. Pakistan has recorded over 2,100 new cases and 52 fatalities overnight, bringing its toll to 10,461. While globally, the virus has claimed 1.86 million lives and infected over 86.3 million people so far. In the United States, state of Georgia, Republicans and Democrats are neck and neck in the nail-biting ballot count that will determine the fate of the Senate. The Democrats need to win both seats, while the Republicans need only one to retain their dominance over Senate. Meanwhile, supporters of President Trump rallied in downtown Washington a day before Congress meets to certify Biden's win. United States President Donald Trump has signed an executive order banning transactions with 8 Chinese software applications. The order says Washington must take aggressive action against developers of Chinese applications to protect national security. Trump's move has further escalated tensions with Beijing just over 2 weeks before President-elect Joe Biden takes office. The Hong Kong police have arrested dozens of politicians and activists in a sweeping crackdown under the city's national security law. Democratic Party says the activists were arrested for taking part in last July's primaries for a postponed legislative council election. Earlier, Hong Kong and Beijing both said the primaries could breach the national security law. And in cricket, New Zealand have beaten Pakistan in the second test in Christchurch to win the series 2-0. The visitors suffered a defeat by an innings and 176 runs. Kyle Jamieson again ripped through the Green Shirts' batting lineup, taking 6 wickets. With 8 straight Test series victory, the Kiwis move to the top spot in World Test rankings. Well, these were the headlines. News in detail after a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now let's have the news in detail. The United States has registered record 3,936 deaths in a day from COVID-19, while the tally of nationwide infections has topped 21 million. Globally, the virus has claimed 1.86 million lives and infected over 86 million people. More on coronavirus in this report.
All across the world, hopes to get rid of COVID-19 are essentially pinned on the vaccine. However, vaccination drives have been hitting snag over multiple issues in countries that have initiated their inculcations. Colombia became the latest country to authorize the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine for emergency use, as World Health Organization said that almost 30 countries have started to vaccinate high-risk groups. Over in the United States as well, the government's Operation Warp Speed has distributed more than 19 million vaccines across the country. However, experts say that the pace of administration of the vaccine doses continue to slow, as only 4.8 million doses have been administered so far. They say that the government has focused way too much on the vaccine, but forgot about the vaccination altogether.
We had been initially told that there'd be 20 million people vaccinated by the end of the year. We're now at barely 2.5 million. And I think what we're seeing is that there was certainly a plan for vaccine. There wasn't a plan for vaccination, and the two are different.
Over in Europe, the United Kingdom reported its highest numbers of infections in a day with nearly 61,000 new cases. United Kingdom health officials say delays in vaccine supply have been affecting the pace of immunization. In France and Denmark, the detection of the new variant has increased fears of a new spike in cases. Citing the situation as really serious, Denmark imposed tougher curbs for an indefinite period. Meanwhile, Germany is further tightening restrictions as it extended the national lockdown until the end of January. Meanwhile, in the latest efforts to starve off another wave, China has imposed curbs in the capital, Beijing. Over in Australia, despite the latest stabilization in recent outbreaks, authorities have decided to bring forward the vaccine rollout to early March.
Meanwhile, in Pakistan, 52 people have lost their lives to COVID-19 over the past 24 hours. This takes the country's death toll to 10,461. Health officials reported 2,118 new infections overnight. Meanwhile, there are more than 37,000 active COVID-19 cases in the country. The Health Ministry says out of over 492,000 countrywide cases, more than 448,000 people have recovered. Meanwhile, passengers from more than 20 countries have been exempted from getting a negative test before entering Pakistan. According to a Civil Aviation Authority notification, Australia, China, Saudi Arabia and New Zealand are among the 23 nations. Now, in India, the protesting farmers have announced a rehearsal tractor march in New Delhi for Republic Day on January 7th. The next round of talks with the centre is scheduled for January 8th. Union leaders have advised farmers in distant areas of Haryana to hold tractor marches in their respective areas if the government bars them from entering the capital. A farm leader said they have a single-point agenda to get the laws repealed and they will not return from Delhi until then. Congress leader Rahul Gandhi said 60 farmers have died since they began their protest over a month ago. Meanwhile, Kashmiri's farmers' leaders have also announced participation in the process. Now, Iran has issued a red notice request to Interpol seeking the arrest of 48 U.S. officials, including President Donald Trump. An Iranian judiciary spokesman said the officials face murder and terrorism charges over General Qasem Soleimani's assassination. He said the culprits also include commanders and officials at the U.S. Defense Department and forces in the Middle East region. U.S. Special Envoy for Iran Brian Hook has described Tehran's move as a mere propaganda stunt. The Interpol rejected Iran's request, saying it cannot intervene in political, military and religious cases. Meanwhile, the U.S. government has collected $7 million of Iranian assets for victims of state-sponsored terrorism. The U.S. Justice Department said the funds were meant to benefit criminal actors engaged in conspiracy to violate U.S. sanctions against Iran. The U.S. has imposed fresh Iran-related sanctions targeting the steel sector. These are part of a continued effort to increase pressure on Tehran in the final weeks of U.S. President Donald Trump's term. In a statement, the Treasury Department said curbs were imposed on 12 Iranian steel makers, a Chinese company and 3 foreign sales agents. The Treasury Secretary, Stephen Mnuchin, said Iran continues to sponsor terrorist groups and seeks weapons of mass destruction. He said the Trump administration remains committed to denying revenue flowing to the Iranian regime. The latest round of sanctions came a day after Iran's Revolutionary Guard seized a South Korean-flagged chemical tanker. In the U.S. state of Georgia, Republicans and Democrats are neck and neck in the nail-biting ballot count that will determine the fate of the Senate. The 2 Senate runoffs are leftovers from the general elections when none of the candidates hit the 50% threshold. Over 3 million votes, comprising about 40% of the state's registered voters, were cast before yesterday's runoff. The Democrats need to win both seats, while Republicans need only one to retain their dominance over the Senate. Meanwhile, President Trump's supporters rallied in downtown Washington a day before Congress meets to certify Biden's victory. Trump is expected to speak at a rally outside the White House against the congressional certification. Now, U.S. intelligence agencies have accused Russia of the massive cyber attacks on government departments. The announcement came in a joint statement from the FBI, the National Security Agency, and the Cyber Security Agency. The agency said the actor, likely Russian in origin, was responsible for most or all of the cyber compromises. They said the hack was a serious compromise that will require a sustained effort to remediate. They added that the breaches appeared to be part of an intelligence gathering and spying effort rather than disruption. This is the first formal assignment of responsibility for the hacks by the U.S. government. The U.S. Treasury and Commerce Departments were, among others, targeted by the hackers. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump has signed an executive order banning transactions with 8 Chinese applications. The order says Washington must take aggressive action against developers of Chinese applications to protect national security. These include WeChat, Pay and Alipay mobile payment apps. Washington says the apps could route user information to government in Beijing. The document adds that such data collection will permit China to track the locations of federal employees and build dossiers of personal information. Moving on now, Hong Kong police have arrested dozens of politicians and activists in a sweeping crackdown under the city's national security law. The raids are the biggest crackdown so far under a security law that was imposed by Beijing on 30th of June. The Democratic Party says the activists were arrested for taking part in last July's primaries for a postponed legislative council election. The police also detained an American lawyer who represented many opposition politicians and helped organize the primaries. Earlier, Hong Kong and Beijing both said the primaries could breach the national security law. Now in Nepal, the top court will today begin hearings on petitions challenging the dissolution of parliament. President Bidya Devi Bandhari dissolved the lower house on Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli's recommendation on 20th of December. A 5-member constitutional bench of the Supreme Court will hear at least 13 writ petitions. In their plea, politicians, activists and lawyers are questioning the right of the leader to dissolve parliament. If the court upholds Oli's move, Nepal will hold elections this summer. If not, parliament will be reinstated. Now, in Venezuela, a new National Assembly dominated by allies of President Nicolas Maduro has been sworn in. The inauguration marks the formal consolidation of power for Maduro and his Socialist Party. It also manifests a symbolic end of the opposition's 5-year struggle to weaken the Maduro regime. The coalition led by Maduro's party won 256 out of the 277 seats in December's election. The opposition parties boycotted the election on grounds of massive fraud and rigging. During his address, National Assembly President George Rodriguez vowed to undo the damages done. Now in India, authorities have decided to cull tens of thousands of poultry after symptoms of bird flu were reported in carcasses of birds. At least 6 Indian states have stepped up efforts to contain the avian virus. 2 strains of the deadly avian influenza H5N1 and H5N8 have been confirmed in the birds. Local authorities have banned the sale and export of poultry in the Himachal Pradesh state. The mass deaths came amid a cull of nearly 35,000 poultry in the southern Kerala state, where a virus outbreak killed up to 12,000 ducks. More news coming up in this bulletin after a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now, the 2021 Harbin International Ice and Snow event has kicked off in China's Heilongjiang province. The festival helps to boost the development of the local ice-snow economy. Temperatures in northeast China are plunging, but Heilongjiang's winter tourism season is heating up. Harbin Snow and Ice World, established in 1999, hosts various events each winter for around 3 months. This year, more than 400 cultural and recreational activities will be held in Harbin till April. The festival is combining ice and snow events with sports, music and culture to attract more tourists while also providing a new experience. It displays ice sculptures of huge proportions such as palace buildings. Meanwhile, the Harbin Municipal Government and China Tourism Academy have released the China Ice and Snow Tourism Development Report 2021 and the Harbin Ice and Snow Tourism Report 2021. Several cities including Harbin, Zhangjiakou, Mudanjiang, Hehe were listed under China's top 10 cities for ice and snow tourism. Now in Palestine, a young girl with a spinal tumor turned to horse riding to improve her posture. But it did more than that and helped her regain some sensation in her legs. Let's find out more in this report.
12-year-old Lian in Palestine opted for horse riding sessions after a spinal tumor diagnosis. The sessions also helped gain some sensation in her limbs that had been affected by the tumor.
When I first started riding the horse, I did not have feeling in my legs. I used to be afraid while riding. Afterwards, and thank God, I started regaining sensation in my legs. So I started to know how to ride and perform other exercises.
Lian's father says after her chemotherapy in 2017, they tried aquatic and physiotherapy, but nothing alleviated her pain. According to Lian's instructor Al-Natche, a single brush with horse riding started to show improvement in her legs.
When she started, she had immense suppleness in her back and could not hold it straight. The way she is sitting now was not apparent then. She used to have a loss of balance. Currently, she can do her exercises. Her father and I used to help her, one from each side. Today, she can do it on her own. Do the back exercises, Lian.
Al-Natche claims that horseback riding has many therapeutic benefits, especially for children with autism and other disabilities. He says it is safe since horses are very sensitive to their riders and will act accordingly.
Now in business news, Saudi Arabia says it is making major cuts in oil output over the next 2 months as a gesture of goodwill to global crude markets. Speaking at the OPEC meeting, Saudi Energy Minister Prince Abdul Aziz bin Salman said Riyadh is the guardian of the global oil industry. He said the cuts are a preemptive measure to mitigate the situation in the face of fragile markets. Prince Abdul Aziz said Riyadh's move is a continuity of the trust it gets from the G20 and other forums. After Saudi Arabia's voluntary cuts, global oil prices have climbed nearly 5%. The cuts are part of a deal to persuade oil producers in OPEC Plus to keep output steady amid concerns that new coronavirus lockdowns will hit demand. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un says his 5-year economic plan has failed to meet its goals on almost every sector. Pyongyang has said it will lay out a new 5-year development plan at the ongoing Congress. In his opening speech in Congress, Kim said the economic strategy he set forth in 2016 was not met in almost all areas. He said North Korea must not repeat the painful lessons. Kim is expected to announce leadership changes and discuss other organizational, budget and audit issues. The Congress was attended by over 4,700 delegates and 2,000 spectators. Now, the world's most popular cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, has emerged as a rival to gold. Investment bank JP Morgan says the digital currency could trade as high as $146,000. Bitcoin's prices peaked at over $35,000 today. The cryptocurrency's prices have tripled in the past 6 months. It has seen increasing demand due to its inflation hedging qualities and potential for quick gains. Expectations of Bitcoin becoming a mainstream payment method also contributed to its high demand. Meanwhile, market sentiments across Asia-Pacific turned sour as races in the Georgia runoff election are tied, creating political uncertainty. China saw its shares fall by 0.2%, while the yuan also dropped by 0.1%. Hong Kong's Hang Seng and South Korea's Kospi fell marginally by 0.1%. Meanwhile, Japan's Nikkei declined by around 1/3%. Australian shares dropped sharply, with ASX 200 index closing 1.1 lower, extending losses to a second straight session. And now let's have a look at the weather updates across the globe. And that is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.